Hey guys, it's Melissa here from melissaoatman.com. Welcome to another episode of Awaken Your Inner Awesomeness. I'm so delighted you're here with me today. Today I'm doing a podcast all about how to work through your triggers. When we were doing our live card reading, this subject came up and a good question was asked, which is how do you work through your triggers? How do you avoid them? How do you deal with them? So I thought that I would tackle this topic today. I think it's one that everyone can relate to because we all have things that trigger us in life. They're different for everyone, but those triggers come from deep emotional wounding that we have. And it could be something that somebody says or does, or maybe even that you think they're thinking about you. And this causes a trigger, which then causes a reaction, which then causes you to lose your control and to be emotionally off balance. So how do you manage this? Because it's not fun to lose your stuff, right? To lose it and to get upset and then to be upset. And I will tell you, I will be honest, I have been triggered a lot in the past year through the behavior and actions of a family member, and it's been really difficult to deal with. So I've also had to work through this. This is why I think it's a really, really important lesson, because one of the things we have to work through is our karma. And if we aren't learning how to love people where they are, but also not take on all of the baggage that brings, then we're going to have to do this all over again because we have to learn how to love people unconditionally, but also how to set boundaries. And that seems very counterproductive. Like, how do you love somebody, but then also tell them no? And it's hard for us to do. We think if you love someone unconditionally, you just say, hey, I love you and whatever. That's not the case. You still have to put up those boundaries. So how do you do that? Because it can be extremely difficult. So I am going to talk about how to identify your triggers and then what can you do instead of allowing them to put you, I like to throw you off balance. That's how I'm going to say it. How do they throw you off balance and how can we stop them from doing that? So the first thing you need to do is to figure out what your big 3 triggers are. When do you tend to get triggered? What's happening when you are being triggered? What are the biggest things for you? For me, it is just feeling like I've been disrespected. That is a trigger for me. And with my family member, that comes with just being like, whatever, you deal with it. That is so annoying. It's like, I want people to take responsibility for their own stuff. So that is a trigger for me. Is when people are being irresponsible and selfish, it triggers me. So what is your trigger? And I know where mine comes from, but what is your trigger? So then we have to understand what's coming right before the reaction. So what is said to you that triggers the reaction? And does it matter who says it? It's interesting. I could have a total stranger say something to me and it wouldn't have any effect at all. But if a family member said the same thing, I would be really upset and livid. So does it matter if it's a specific person who's saying this thing to you? And what is it that they say? Does it trigger you because you're tired or stressed? Or is there, do you feel like there's a certain time in your life when you are more triggered than others? So when you are more stressed out or when you are more tired, think about all of those things. You really have to dig in to figure this out. What are the top 3 things that trigger you? What's being said? Who's saying it? Is there a condition that has to be just ripe for you to be triggered? So does it happen more often when you're tired and when you don't feel your best? What's going on? Then the important thing is to identify what's being said. What's the story? What is the story that you've told yourself that whatever person X is saying means this to you? What is that story? And I can give you an example. I used to be super triggered when people talk about my weight. because I had people say not kind things to me when I was in high school. And I was never in my life fat by any means, but I will never forget on a Christmas Eve going over to see a step uncle, so great uncle. And I didn't care for him anyway, but then he asked me, like, are you putting on weight? Do you have a scale at home? He just kept making comments. And it was not necessary. And it really hurt my feelings. And from then on, anything anyone said about weight, like my dad said to me not too long ago, I can't believe you eat as much as you do and you weigh what you weigh or whatever. It wasn't meant to be an insult, but of course, because I already had that previous story, it was irritating. Now, I realized he didn't mean anything by it, but my daughter, for example, same thing. He said something to her that was innocent in that way, and she also was very triggered because her dad used to say things to her about her weight. If you have a story that goes back, then somebody could innocently say something to you and it's going to trigger you and set you off because you're basing it off of the experience that you had from someone else. So you have to understand where that story comes from. Why do I get triggered if someone mentions X, Y, or Z? And it's probably because you had some sort of incident happen to you and the wounding from that incident is still with you. So identify what the story is that you're telling yourself. If someone criticizes you, what meaning are you assigning to that? Sometimes people are just trying to point out ways we can be better. But if we had always been criticized when we were young, and then someone tries to give you constructive criticism or a little feedback, you can take it the wrong way. Or if you, for example, someone has a different point of view as you might take that as they don't like you or you have to try to convince them to see it your way when you don't. Like, you don't have to agree on every single thing, but why would it trigger you to feel like you had to? There's something there. So what is that underlying story? Do you feel like you always have to prove that you're right or that you're it's kind of, to me, that goes right along with proving your worth. I have to show you that I'm smart and that I'm right because I have to prove my own worth. When you don't, you can disagree with people. It shouldn't trigger you to disagree. We've gotten away from that, being able to see things from different points of view and feeling like we have to argue all the time. And that isn't necessarily the case. So what is your story? Why is something that somebody else is saying to you triggering you? What event have you assigned meaning to that now causes you to interpret everything that happens to you in that way? And the next thing you need to do is to recognize the physical signs. You know when you're starting to become triggered because maybe your face gets flushed. Maybe you start to feel like you want to shut down. Maybe your heart races. Maybe you feel like a drop in the pit of your stomach. The physical signs show up before you have any conscious thought of being upset. So it's important if you start to notice that you're, okay, I'm feeling flushed, my heart is racing. Because if we are about to go into a situation where we know we might be triggered, our body has a physical reaction to that ahead of time. And then we get into fight or flight mode. And then that causes us not to be able to think logically. And so then we react in a way we wouldn't normally. So we already start being triggered before we are even triggered, if that makes sense. So identify what happens to you physically before you become triggered. Also, it's important then, once you realize what's causing it, it's important to have something, some effective method that interrupts a reaction. You've identified what your big three triggers are. You know what causes them. You know how you physically feel when they start to occur. Now we have to figure out how to interrupt them before they can manifest into a reaction. So what successfully interrupts you? Is it stopping what you're doing and taking 3 deep breaths? Is it thinking about a wonderful childhood memory that takes you out of where you are right now? Is it having affirmations ready that you can just mentally say to yourself over and over again that kind of disrupts that thought pattern? What is it for you? And it's going to be different for everybody. But those are some things that you can do. You can do some affirmations to take you out of the emotional state of your brain. When you're in that emotional part of your brain, you can't think logically. And here's the thing, if you're dealing with people who purposefully try to trigger you, and that happens. That used to happen with my ex all the time, and I fell for it every time. It took so long for me to actually realize what was happening. When you don't have a reaction, when you don't play into it, it's no longer fun for people. So they stop. And that seems like such an easy thing. Like, yeah, it can't be that simple. It is that simple. It is that simple. For a lot of people, it's about manipulation and control. And when you take that out of their hands, if you cannot be controlled, because when you're overly emotional, you're easily manipulated. When you are no longer able to be controlled or manipulated, it is not fun for that person and they will move on to the next person. So you have to get your emotions in check. How do you do that? How do you regulate your emotions? Through deep breaths and deep breathing? Is it through affirmations that you say to yourself every day that distract you? Is it through thinking about memories that made you happy so you put yourself in a different emotional state? What is it that you do that takes you out of that emotional state? EFT is a great thing if you can do it. If you're in a space where you can do emotional freedom technique, and you don't have to do the whole script and everything. If you're somewhere and you're in public and you can't do the whole EFT, because it's going to look weird if you're in public and you're doing it, but you can still tap. You can tap on your hand. You can tap, you can just put your forehead down and like tap a couple of times on your forehead. Do the tapping that takes you out of that. It's like the fight or flight stage. You got to do something to regulate and calm your emotions. So find what it is that works for you. And that's what you need to do, whether it's a distraction of thinking about something else, using affirmations because really what you're doing then is redirecting your thoughts there too. Whatever it is, you need to have something ready to go that this is a surefire way to distract myself. Take deep breaths. Those deep breaths are so important. Stay focused on your breathing. And I always try to envision when I do the breathing that I am exhaling all that toxicity. I'm letting it go. It doesn't affect me. I'm breathing in positive and light, and I'm exhaling all of that toxicity and that negative energy. The other thing that you can do is to change your environment. So once you see the trigger or whatever, get away from that as soon as you can. Change your environment. Physically leave the room. And it's okay to do that. If you can make an excuse, even if you're someplace, you can say, oh, I need to step outside and run to my car for a minute. Go outside, change your environment. Then go outside and do the deep breaths or do the tapping or do whatever you need to do. You can remove yourself from the situation. When my son was younger, we used to get into fights a lot. And he would say to me finally, like, Mom, I just need to take a minute. I need a minute to go and calm down. And then we can come back and we can talk about it. Now, this is my son telling me this, who knew more than I did at that time, but I did not learn how to regulate my emotions until I was older. He's the one who said, I need to take a moment. I need a break. It's okay to excuse yourself. If something is getting heated, if there's an argument, whatever, excuse yourself and go take a break. You can either do that by saying, I need to go use the restroom, I'll be right back, or I need to go to my car to grab something. But change where you are, leave that environment, take your breaths, calm down. Because again, if you're in an overly emotional state, you can be easily manipulated. So take your breaths, regulate your emotions, come back to a place of center. You could even close your eyes, like go outside, close your eyes, take a deep breath, and imagine a beautiful light coming down that is centering you, removing the toxicity, replenishing your energy, and then go back in. And it's always okay to say to somebody, I don't want to talk to you about this right now. I need a moment. It's also okay to say what you just said is not okay. Do not talk to me that way. We have to stand up for ourselves. But it's important to do that deep diving work beforehand because sometimes what triggers us, other people didn't mean to trigger us. And it might be our own selves assigning meaning to something that really doesn't have anything to do with what's actually going on. So identify what your big 3 triggers are. What happens when these happen? What happens right before it? Is it something that somebody says? Is it an environment that you're in? Is it a specific person that says it? Identify all of those things. What are the physical things that happen to you before you get triggered? Identify what physically happens to you first. And then what's the story you've told yourself? Why are you triggered by this? What's happening? Really try to dig deep and figure out the first time I was ever triggered by this, what happened? What do I remember? And then have a disruptor. Bring yourself back to a regulated emotional state. Take deep breaths and remove yourself from the environment if necessary. All right. Well, I hope that was helpful for you. And just be gentle with yourself because triggers really just show us where we still need to be healed, where we still have healing to be done. So be patient with that process. And I wanted to pull a few cards for you today. So the first one that came out is coming into power. I step into my power boldly and confidently. And it's so true because when we allow our triggers to take over, we're giving away our power. It's time to take back your power by understanding what your triggers are and healing the things that cause them. The next card is exceeding expectations. I soar into confidence. So whatever you do this week, do it with full confidence, knowing that you are exceeding and succeeding in everything that you set out to do. And keep that mindset that I exceed all of my expectations. I do everything I set out to accomplish, and you will go very far. Well, I want to send you guys so much love and light. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I hope that you have a beautiful week, and I will talk to you soon. Bye, guys.